freak-offs, secret parties, private jets, federal raids, and now closing arguments in a courtroom that could decide Sean Diddy Combs' fate. What started as a whisper of celebrity scandal exploded into a nationwide investigation. But how did we get here? And what does this say about power, silence, and justice in 2025? This is why Diddy's scandal changed the American music industry forever. Welcome to Review Daddy, where we decode the mystery behind every headline. To all our returning and new subscribers, thank you. You all are our biggest motivation. Let's dive deep, straight up. Sean Diddy Combs, also known as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, and Love, is more than a music mogul and hip-hop royalty. He wasn't just a music producer, but he's a cultural architect, a movement that transformed hip-hop into a billion-dollar lifestyle brand. In 1993, a young intern-turned-executive took a gamble and started Bad Boy Entertainment. With the signing of the notorious B.I.G., Diddy lit the match that would redefine East Coast rap. Bad Boy became a sound, a style, a swagger. By the late 90s, he was everywhere, winning Grammys, topping charts, and reinventing his identity with every era. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, Love. His debut album, No Way Out, went 7 times platinum, and in that moment, the mogul was born. Diddy didn't stop at music. He launched Sean John, turning streetwear into luxury. Then came Revolt, a media network built for Black voices. And of course, Ciroc, a vodka brand that, under his influence, became a lifestyle. He gave back too, opening charter schools, funding scholarships, pledging millions to HBCUs. In the eyes of many, he wasn't just rich, he was inspirational. And while the world watched the lights, the secrets were hiding in the dark.
Sold something terrifying.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you, and I would like to auction something off, okay?
For over 3 decades, Sean Diddy Combs stood as a symbol of reinvention, from uptown intern to multimillionaire mogul. But by 2024, the empire he built began to crack. And then, it collapsed. It began quietly. A lawsuit filed by singer Cassie Ventura, Diddy's longtime partner, in November 2023. She alleged years of physical abuse, forced intimacy, emotional torment, and a disturbing term that would ignite the internet: freak-offs. Within 24 hours, the case was settled, silently, but the damage was done. A door had been opened, and dozens of women walked through. On March 25th, 2024, in a coordinated operation that stunned both the music industry and the public, Homeland Security raided Sean Diddy Combs' multi-million-dollar estates in Los Angeles and Miami. This wasn't a routine celebrity brush with law enforcement. It was a full-scale federal move that spoke volumes. Dozens of armed agents, helicopters circling overhead, black SUVs lined the streets. The scene looked more like a military sting than a music mogul's morning. Authorities seized laptops, smartphones, hard drives, and an undisclosed number of storage devices, all as part of an escalating investigation into sex trafficking, coercion, and criminal enterprise activity tied to Combs. For years, rumors had circulated about parties, power abuse, and NDAs. But this was different. This was federal. Publicly, Diddy maintained his innocence. Through his lawyers, he labeled the accusations lies, sensationalism, and money grabs. But privately, the silence from his camp was deafening. Collaborators distanced themselves, industry peers went mute, and longtime associates, once fiercely loyal, vanished from view. No tweets, no defenses, no solidarity statements. The raids didn't just signal legal trouble, they shattered the illusion of invincibility around one of hip-hop's most powerful figures. And for the first time in decades, Diddy's empire looked vulnerable. Fast forward to June 2024, and the legal firestorm around Sean Diddy Combs had grown into a full-blown avalanche. Over a dozen lawsuits had stacked up against him, each one more damning than the last. No longer limited to accusations from ex-partners or former flames, these lawsuits came from former employees, assistants, security personnel, and industry insiders, many of whom had signed non-disclosure agreements that were now being challenged in court. The allegations includes women allegedly drugged before being coerced into sexual acts, and bodyguards acting as enforcers, intimidating anyone who dared to step out of line or threaten exposure. What made these cases impossible to ignore wasn't just the volume, it was the evidence. Federal investigators compiled flight logs, hotel bookings, encrypted text messages, wire transfers, and even home surveillance footage that allegedly captured some of the activity described in the lawsuits. Combined, the data painted a disturbing digital paper trail. This is not just the Diddy case, but an entrance into a serious criminal enterprise territory. When the lawsuits against Sean Diddy Combs went public and the federal raids hit national headlines, the focus quickly shifted from one man to something much bigger. It wasn't just Diddy on trial, it was a mirror held up to the entire entertainment industry. For decades, hip-hop culture had celebrated wealth, loyalty, and street credibility. But in that celebration, a darker truth had often been ignored: the unchecked power of gatekeepers like Diddy, who operated in a space where accountability was scarce and silence could be bought. As the accusations grew in number and detail, ranging from coercion and sexual misconduct to trafficking and intimidation, the brands that once stood proudly beside him moved fast to protect themselves. Ciroc, the luxury vodka label that Diddy helped elevate to global prominence, was among the first to quietly end its partnership. Sean John, once a fashion powerhouse, vanished from store shelves. Even Revolt TV, the network Diddy founded to amplify Black voices, distanced itself, releasing a statement clarifying that he no longer had operational control. But the collapse of a brand wasn't the end of it. It was the beginning of reckoning across the music industry. Label executives began combing through artist contracts, reassessing past settlements, and reevaluating how power had been protected for so long. Some studios brought in external legal teams to conduct compliance reviews, while others implemented new policies around sexual harassment, consent training, and artist welfare. The veil had been lifted. The era of looking the other way in the name of fame was being questioned like never before. And as Diddy faced the courts, the music world could no longer pretend that success justified silence. His trial sent a clear message: the old game is over, and the rules are being rewritten. The music industry has long operated in the shadows of power. Fame, money, and legacy often shielded some of its biggest stars from scrutiny. But the case against Sean Diddy Combs changed that forever. When the lawsuits and raids became public, a chain reaction began behind the scenes. Record labels launched internal investigations. NDAs signed years ago were suddenly under legal review. Lawyers were called, crisis teams activated, and for the first time, the music world asked itself a chilling question: who's next? The scandal sparked a wave of industry-wide introspection. Several management companies began drafting new codes of conduct, specifically addressing sexual misconduct and abuse of power. Independent labels and studios introduced third-party HR compliance for artists and staff. Festivals and performance platforms reevaluated their booking policies. Corporate sponsors quietly dropped artists with questionable pasts. Even music schools began including ethics and consent training in artist development programs. But perhaps the biggest shift came from within. Young artists and songwriters began to speak up, rejecting the toxic loyalty culture that protected predators for decades. Diddy's scandal wasn't just another celebrity fall, it became a signal flare, a warning that in today's industry, silence will no longer be a survival strategy. The era of unchecked power was beginning to end. As the music industry began examining itself, contracts, NDAs, digital evidence, it became clear the internet never forgets. In fact, many of the cases against Diddy relied heavily on digital trails, texts, emails, even cloud-stored footage. And that's why your digital privacy matters more than ever. That's why we trust NORDVPN, a tool that encrypts your activity, protects your identity, and keeps your private moments truly private. Use the exclusive Review Daddy link in the description box to get a great deal. In the aftermath of the Diddy scandal, the music industry didn't just flinch, it began to evolve. Quietly but rapidly, a new set of rules started taking shape. Top record labels, once known for protecting their stars at all costs, started drafting ethics and conduct policies specifically targeting abuse, harassment, and exploitation. Universal, Warner, and Sony updated their internal codes to require mandatory consent training for artists and touring staff. They implemented third-party complaint systems, so artists, dancers, producers, even assistants could report misconduct without fear of retaliation. Artist onboarding now includes sessions on boundaries, power dynamics, and the legal implications of NDAs. Managers and agents are being held more accountable, no longer just the middlemen, but part of the chain of responsibility. Booking agencies and festivals introduced vetting protocols, asking for artist conduct histories before approving deals. Sponsors are adding morality clauses with real bite. Any hint of scandal, and the check stops. The new rules won't erase the past, but they're beginning to build a different future. One where talent is no longer a shield, and silence is no longer a currency. In this new era, power must answer to principle, and the game is being rewritten. In the end, Diddy's downfall wasn't just about one man. It was about an entire culture cracking open. A culture that long traded silence for access. That valued hits over humanity. That ignored warning signs because the music was just too loud. But now, the silence is broken. The industry is watching itself in the mirror. Maybe for the first time. The contracts are being rewritten. The rules are being enforced. And the curtain has been pulled back on what happens when power goes unchecked. And while we're talking about accountability and control, let's not forget, your own digital footprint says a lot about you. Whether you're an artist, a fan, or just a curious browser, what you do online should belong to you, not to big tech, hackers, or third parties. That's why we use NORDVPN. It encrypts your traffic, hides your location, and protects your data on any device, in any country, especially in an era where digital evidence can tell your entire story. Your privacy is your power. Use the link in the description box to get an exclusive Review Daddy deal.